David Lichtenstein, and welcome to the Yeshiva Shalmaila. This week we'll be revisiting Yeshiva Chovovei Torah. Are they really Orthodox? In other words, many of us appreciate that it's a different world. Every generation is different, and there are certainly unique challenges to our generation. And we have to be open-minded. But have they become so open-minded that perhaps they've lost the mantra of Orthodoxy? Before we did this program, we asked both the Novominsker Rebbe as well as Reb David Cohen, and they read the transcript and they agreed to play it. They agreed that we should play it. So, in other words, we should be highlighting our differences and let our listeners decide. From Chovovei Torah, you have the president, Ysoscher, Lopatin, and Rabbi Ysoscher Katz. He's the chair of the Gemara department at Chovovei. We have David Rosenthal. He wrote a book about it, and we'll be discussing, among other things, gay marriage, women rabbis, etc., etc. I'm not sure that this topic is for the fickle-minded, as some of the statements will seem to be a little bit, bombastic. But if you want to listen, do so. Don't call me afterwards screaming, okay? Next week we will be speaking about impeachment. No, not impeaching the president. They're not calling us to ask, but can you impeach a different type of Jewish leader? What are the requirements? When do we say there's a chazakah? You have an elderly rebbe, a rav, a teacher, a parnas. What do we need to impeach a Jewish leader? That will be the topic. We have a wonderful slate of guests. Looking forward. I do want to say something interesting about the parsha. I know we have a lot of women listeners, I know from our calls, from the emails. So I want to point something out that when I saw it, I thought it was rather humorous. What is the first chet that Adam Harishon makes? Well, I'm not sure it's a chet. Call it mistake. What is the first mistake of Adam Harishon? And no, it's not listening to Chava. It's not eating from the Eitz Hadas. We're not. I respect my Olam too much to throw them softballs like that. So I would put to you that the first chet is, or the first mistake is in the beginning of Bereshis. Hanachash hayaram, and he tells Vayomer leisha af ki yomer lekim lo yiseichu mikol eitzagan. So what does the Isha tell the Nachash? He said, the Rabbi Shalom said, don't touch the tree. And the Mefarshim already say that Haisifa, Al-Hatziva, Rashi says, and therefore she came the mistake, right? And Rashi says it's the Isra of Baal Taisif. According to Rashi, certainly. Now the question is, she never spoke to Hashem. Hashem never told her this. How could she say, Amar Elikim Laiseichel Mimenu? How did she know? So the Avos Reb Nassan and the Rechaim says a similar thing, but it's a Chazal Avos Reb Nassan. They say Adam Harishon said when he told it to her, the way he repeated the Maimer Elikim, he added on. He was over Baal Taisif and he added Loisigu. So the first chet in Bria, the first mistake is when man is condescending to a woman. Let me make Gedarim. The Daitem Kalais, the silly, they don't understand. She's not going to understand Yiddishkeit well enough. Let me put it to her more like let me make her chakis, Gedarim, let me make it easy for the distaff side. The first mistake in the entire Bria by Adam that we have on record is when he treats the woman and he says, you know what, I'm gonna make things easy. I'm gonna make it for her. I'm afraid she's gonna err. Let's be patronizing and condescending. Okay, I'm sure we'll get a lot of flack on this, but if you have another one, or if you think I'm turning wrong shot, Adarabba, call up. We of course play all our messages as long as they're reasonably polite. Before we go to our guests, I want to do a vert that it's both on Sukkot, but it's on right after Sukkot too. What's the takeaway from Sukkot? We just had a fabulous Yom Tif with guests, hopefully family. We danced. We made Nanuim. Fantastic. What's the takeaway? What does the sukkah represent? And I want to give you a thought. What does the Torah say? Chag HaSukkah is tasalacha shivas yamim ba'aspecha. It's the time of gathering, of harvest. Migarncho miyikvecha, from your grain, from your wine, your olives. It's the time when you're satisfied, right? Things are going well. And what does it say right afterwards? V'samachta b'chagecha atu bincha v'techa. Things are going well. Let's rejoice. But here's the problem. You know what could be dangerous? Success could be dangerous to your health. That's right. Success can be dangerous to our health. We celebrate our families. Ata bincho v'secha. Right? Do you know the average father spends 5 minutes a day with a child? It's according to a poll. You can Google it. Our health. We celebrate our health. Everything's good. It's good times. 60% of Americans are obese. And we also celebrate ba'aspecha, migarncha, miyikvecha, our success, financial success, the Torah says celebrate. Do you know 76% of people have credit card debt that they can't pay off, they don't pay monthly, that they can't pay off? So what does that mean? Satisfaction, success, feeling that, I am where I should be, complacency, enjoying the status quo, they can become golden handcuffs. And handcuffs, even if they're gold, close us off to emotions, the 5 minutes a day we spend to our kids, because we come home, we give them a hug, we give a kiss, we give right to back, run into our study, to our, wherever it may be, right? It can close off love. It can close off effort. Golden handcuffs. I'm satisfied where I am. Cages come in different shapes and colors. They can be padded. They can be very comfortable cages. But satisfaction and complacency, they could be dangerous. The Gemara in Bava Metzia and Daf Behei says Reb Zera, when he went from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, right? Yosef Meya Tainisa, he fasted 100 days, 100 Tainesim. Why? The L'shtakach Gemara Bavlo Mine, that he should forget the Gemara he learned. He was going to a new yeshiva. He was creating a new beginning. He didn't want to have all that knowledge from before, even though it was wonderful. But it creates complacency. He wanted to stop. So, what happens Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? We recreate ourselves. We say we're letting the Yud Gimel Midas Harachmim, Mechila, we're letting go of the past. We're going to establish a new beginning, new ideas, new thoughts, new efforts, new vistas, new horizons. We promised the Rabbi Shalom as well as ourselves, change. But then we step right back into comfortable shoes. Our homes, our beds, our relationships. You can hear the cage closing. And what's it closing on? It's closing on potential. It's closing off potential. Right? It's locking out dreams. It's handcuffing us to our current comfort level and blocking the promises, forestalling the promises we just made. So what does the Torah say right after Chag HaSukkos? Walk into a new environment, one without the comforts, where you don't have all that. You can't use fruit for schach. It has to be psailas goyer in the yekev, the junk. All my success I leave behind. Psailas, right? Leave the cage so that we have the opportunity that the promises we made, they just don't die in a minute. You have 1 week to think about. This is different. I'm in a different environment. I promise change. The sukkah also comes miloshin sacha beruach hakodesh, to gaze into the future. right? To see long distances. You made all those promises. You had that vision. Can we go someplace that supports that vision? Let's go into the sukkah, the place for dreams. So what does the Shulchan Aruch say? Immediately after Yom Kippur, the same night, Matzi Yom Kippur, start building your sukkah. Preserve, right? It's a preservative. Jump right into the change you promised. And perhaps we jump by Moshe Emes, V'seirasa Emes. It says that Das Kairach, the children of Kairach, they were stuck in the group. All that comfort, that social, the friends. At the last minute, they jumped out and they did tshuva. If we want to see truth beyond our comfort zone, there's only one way to do it. You have to koifetz b'chol koichai by Moshe Emes. When we want to see Emes, jump! Leave the comfort of everything you have. That's our story. Before we go to our guests, we would like to ask the riddle of the week. We're going to ask 2 riddles this week. It says, Vayechal Elokim b'yom hashvi malachtei asherasa. So Rashi says, Reb Shimon Omer, Basa v'dam she'einu yedea ita v'rgav. A man of flesh and blood doesn't know exact minutes and times, right? So he's tzarech lahaisef bichayil ala kodesh. Aval HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he knows the exact time. It's nichnas by kechut hasayra. So it looks like it ended immediately, like in that day. So v'yechal leikim b'yom hashvi to basa v'dam, it looked like b'yom hashvi, but by God he knew efshel tzamtim the exact second. So he went right into it. That's the medrash from Shimon that Rashi brings. So it seems from Rashi that the din of Tosfos Shabbos, that you're supposed to be moisef mi choil ala kodesh, is not a mitzvah, but it's just a din. Look, you don't want to chas v'sholom be nichshol on Shabbos, so leave yourself some, belt and suspenders. Leave yourself some leeway, an ear cushion, right? But the Rebbeinu Shalom knew it exactly. He didn't need it. The problem is the shita of Rav the Rishonim. Look in the Maggid Mishnah and Aleph of Shvi Ysoscher, Lachavav, and etc. Hold that chiyuv Tosfos kodesh ala chayil, right, is a deraisa. So Manishach. From Rashi brings a chazal that says it's only also safik. You don't know what you're doing, right? But the halacha is, no, it's a deraisa, so it's not because of a suffix like a harchaka, but there's a din that you're supposed to be moisef, right? You're supposed to make Shabbos greater, right? Tosfos Shabbos. So even the Rabbeinu Shalom, that he was Yodei Ita V'Ragav, according to halacha and real Torah Labas Shemayim, that it's a deraisa. So even the Rabbeinu Shalom, who knew the exact time, why didn't he make Tosfos Shabbos? That's the kasha on Rashi. This is Beis, easy to remember. That's a kasha on the Rashi. And we'll ask one more question. Vayishalcheyu Hashem Elokim miGan Eden vayigarish es ha'adam. So Adam was thrown out of the Garden of Eden, out of Gan Eden. But l'chayrit shver, we hold that tshuva is oike chet from the beginning, right? So the question is, if Adam did tshuva, and we'll see soon that he did, why wasn't this battled einish hamisa? The Medrash says in Perikov Gimel Yud Gimel, Adam asked Cain, "Ma nasach? What was your din? What happened?" The Heshivlei asisi tshuva finis pasharti. So it says Adam started banging himself on his head. Oh, this is the tshuva, and he says he did it for 130 years. He did tshuva. Yashav b'tainis for that one thing. 100, certainly a long time to do tshuva. Better than our one day in Kippur. If tshuva is oike the chet, and not only that, all the Torah is nine of nasaloi kischuyais, so the chet should be nekala mafreya, and why is the einish of misa still on all of us? Those are our 2 riddles of the week. Let's go to our program. We have on the phone with us Rabbi Ysoscher Lopatin, who is the president of Yeshivas Chovovei Torah in Riverdale. He was previously the leader of Anshe Shalom in Chicago, and actually the rabbi of the current mayor of Chicago. He's a graduate of Boston University. He's in 1989, he got a Master of Philosophy from Oxford. Additionally, he's a Rhodes Scholar and a Truman Scholar and a member of Phi Beta Kappa, probably one of the most accomplished, degreed people I've ever interviewed. Additionally, he's a musbach of Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik. Welcome, Rabbi Lopatin.
Thank you. It's good to be on your show.
So, Rabbi Lopatin, if you could give us, because a lot of our people are sort of, everything's third hand, can you give us a brief overview of what is open Orthodoxy?
Great. Well, it'd be my pleasure. What people call open Orthodoxy really is really just modern Orthodoxy. Maybe it's reclaiming true modern Orthodoxy, and it's really Orthodoxy, and I really feel it's just part of Torah true Yiddishkeit. The term came from Rav Avi Weiss, who, when he was thinking of starting a yeshiva where people could be open about all their questions and everything could be discussed on the table, he felt the term open was perfect. I do not see it, and the yeshiva doesn't see it as a separate movement or anything like that. It's really just, in some ways, the best way to describe open Orthodox learning is a method of learning where people feel comfortable and safe to struggle with issues that they face in the contemporary world, to ask the questions, to not be ashamed of offering possible understandings of halacha. But besides that, it's really very much like what you see in any other Orthodox yeshiva, people learning the Chavrusa, Rebbeim, learning from the Rebbeim, using classic sources, and also classic contemporary sources, Rav Yosef, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Zalman Nechemi Goldberg, all the names that come up as poskim, the Tzitz Eliezer. So all the names from the Gemara to the Rishonim, to Acharonim, and to today's contemporary poskim, that's what you would hear. And the idea really is that we should not be afraid of the world around us. We should not be afraid of the challenges that the contemporary world, contemporary society, challenge us with. But actually, we should welcome them and feel secure in our Yiddishkeit, secure in our method of learning, and secure that we can face these challenges and thrive with them, and not, instead of hiding from them, really embrace them.
So, Rabbi Lopatin, I went through Avi Weiss's Open Orthodoxy, a Modern Orthodox Rabbi's Creed, which was, would that sort of be the document of Yeshivas Chovovei Torah? Would that be the operative theology behind the yeshiva? I'm referring to what he wrote in 1997.
Yeah, and that really kicked off. The yeshiva is 17 years old. It really kicked it off, and so I think we operate within that theology and within that understanding. I'm not sure that every student that comes in reads that, but yeah, I think that what we're doing at Chovovei is consistent with that theology, with that document, and it's definitely the inspiration for who we are, for our Talmudim. We have 108 Mismachim going out into the world, and I think, yes, it's definitely the inspiration for them.
So the Orthodox world is concerned, and I'm sure you've been reading about it in the press, that there is shinuyim, there are differences that will lead to halachic differences between Orthodoxy and modern Orthodoxy. Can you think of any halachic differences between them?
Well, I think that there are a lot of differences within the Orthodox world in general, and so definitely, let's say, on Yom HaTzma'ut, saying Hallel with a bracha, not saying Tachanun. And the truth is, saying Hallel with a bracha is a major halachic issue. So that's something that, there's a lot of disagreement within. There's shinuyim, some people see that, within Orthodoxy. I would say that a lot of the things that look very different, if we're looking at issues of, I guess, attitudes towards women's involvement with learning, with leadership, with even in the services, a lot of them don't involve halachic issues. Attitudes towards people that were normally excluded. For instance, how do you deal with a gay couple that comes to your shul? How do you deal with on college campus? How do you deal with someone on college campus that is has issues with their hashkafot and their Orthodox? And all these things really, in general, don't involve halacha. They involve much more, definitely Masorah, but they involve also, I would say, almost the aesthetics of Judaism. Like, it looks different. Having a woman give a Dvar Torah in shul, it looks different. It feels different. Having a woman carry a Sefer Torah through the women's section, through the Ezras Nashim, so you still have the Mechitza. And you look up in the Aruch HaShulchan, and it says explicitly that women can touch a Torah, and there's no issue of nida. So it doesn't involve halacha, but it definitely involves aesthetics, and a lot of it is really community-based, that if you live in a community where women don't even go to shul, or if they do, really, a man would never see a woman in shul, they're behind a very high mechitza, then aesthetically it looks very strange. If you're in a community where women are in shul and women are singing, an Orthodox community where women are singing, women are participating in that way on the other side of the mechitza, just like the men sing, the women sing, and all that, then it doesn't look as strange. So it's really, issues of halacha like kashrus, issues of tarat hamishpacha, really the classic issues of davening, of Shabbos, those issues. I don't think there's really much difference between a modern Orthodox, a progressive Orthodox, a liberal Orthodox, Haredi, but really it's more the aesthetics, I would say.
So let me ask you some issues that are really not halacha, but they go more to hashkafa. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to quote, at random. I spent the last day or so sort of on Facebook going through some of the. So here are some quotes, and I'll tell you who their names are. So because they're not from you, but they're from different members, I guess, who are part of either the Anhala, or I have Rabbi Ysoscher Katz, who is the head of Gemara, I guess, in Halacha at Yeshivas Chovovei Torah. And I also have some from Rabbi Farber, who's a Musmach, and who's a board member of the International Rabbinic Membership. And here are some things that I think that just sort of sound a little bit mechudash, let me say. Here's a quote, okay? This is from Rabbi Farber. Avram and Sarah are folkloristic characters, factually speaking. They are not my ancestors or anyone else's. I mean, for somebody to say that Avram Avinu is not our grandfather, that the Aves, we're not, Alekei Avram, Alekei Yitzchak, Alekei Yaakov is just a folklore. I think that most Orthodoxy and modern Orthodoxy would have an issue with it. He says these are easily identified. They're ahistorical. They fit into the genre of folklore, allegory, and intentionally fantastic character in order to explain some aspect of the world in which we live. Let me continue. He says that the 12 Shvatim really didn't exist. And he says Yetzias Mitzrayim never occurred. This is all in one large paper that I printed out here from Rabbi Farber. I think most Orthodox would have an issue with saying that we don't come from the Avos.
And I agree with that. I have an issue also with that. First of all, Torah Misinai, Torah Shemayim is a non-negotiable. It's a pillar of Orthodoxy, and we make sure that our students, to get smicha, you have to believe that. It's a free country, but if you want to be part of our yeshiva, you have to believe that. Second of all, really, these belief in Yetzias Mitzrayim and in the Avos and Himahos, these are, I think, our basic principles of belief of Yiddishkeit. I think Rabbi Farber, so some things he says I disagree with and Yeshiva disagrees with, and I really do feel as uncomfortable as you do. I think that he uses a lot of language that if you really sat down with him and really unpacked it, he would say, in some ways, of course, I believe in Mitzrayim, but, this whole idea of ahistorical, that, okay, if what I believe is history needs to be proven by actual historic archaeological evidence, okay, then that's one thing. But, how does he know, how does he know for sure it did not happen? Does he have evidence that it did not happen? You see it in Mitzrayim or anything like that? So, I think that these things, and I turned to the head of Ramah's day school in New York, Rabbi Dr. Eric Grossman, and he says a lot of these sensitive issues when it comes to history, when it comes to how you explain midrashim and how do you understand the pshat of the text with the avos and mahos and all sorts of things, they need to be handled not in an article that gets put up on Facebook or wherever, but sometimes when someone has fakos, you have to sit with them one-on-one and look at it and discuss different pshatim. The Rashbam might disagree with the Rambam, and Ramban would disagree with the Rambam. So, they have to be handled very sensitively. But I agree with you, and I think that the Chevra at Yeshivat Chovovei Torah and our Rabbanim would be they all believe, I can vouch for them, they all believe in Yitzias Mitzrayim. They all say they daven 3 times a day, and they mean it, and that the avos are our avos. And I think that I share your discomfort with them. And, when a student has questions, it's good to ask those questions. It's good for a student to say, I'm really troubled, but how do we explain Yitzias Mitzrayim when it doesn't fit in with what archaeologists believe or something? Okay, let's sit down and let's talk about it. But it all starts, and it has to be contingent on a belief in our Masoret and our...
So here, Rabbi Lopatin, here's a quote from Rabbi Katz. That was Rabbi Farber. Here's a quote from Rabbi Katz, who's the chair of the Department of Halacha and Gemara, and he says, and this is in a Facebook quote, April 3rd, 2015, he says, biblical fiction. The retelling of the Exodus story is fiction. It is a record of God's conversation with fictionalized characters. I mean,
yeah, I think
this is a Rosh Yeshiva there. Could you understand what? In Chovovei, I'm saying, could you think of any yeshiva in our history where Rosh Yeshiva would get up and say, according to the rabbis, the retelling of the Exodus story is fiction, it's biblical fiction, it's a record of God's conversation with fictionalized characters. I mean, he's basically saying, Moshe and Aaron are fictionalized characters too. I mean, how does the Rosh Yeshiva get up and say something like that?
Well, first of all, he's one of our Rabbanim. Our Rosh Yeshiva is Dov Linzer, but he's one of our Chashava Rabbanim, Rabbi Katz, and he's a big Maimin, and I think that the reason it is unique at Chovovei Torah because I don't think Rosh Yeshiva and most of these will talk about what does fiction mean. What does fiction mean? What does literary fiction mean? And it doesn't mean that it's not true. I think that's a very good and that would be a very simple and simplistic understanding of fiction. What he's saying is that, and he said this all along, is that the Torah is not out to be a book of history. It's not that takes it, really demeans the Torah when we just use the Torah as a book of history. It's much more significant. So I think when he talks about fiction, he talks about it on a much deeper level. Not that it's not true, not even that it didn't happen or that it's fake or anything chas v'shalom like that, but that it has a deeper message and a deeper import. That the role of Torah is not to teach us historical truth. Yeah, Chinami, they all happen. That's the role of Torah is much more similar to the literary role of fiction, which goes beyond that. Did it happen? How did it happen? How do historians think it happened? It's much more to teach us important lessons, and that's very traditional.
Given the data to which modern historians have access, it is impossible to regard the account of mass exodus from Egypt or the wilderness experience, Yetzias Mitzrayim or the Midbar, or the coordinated, swift, and complete conquest of the entire land of Canaan under Yeshua as historical. He says it's impossible to see Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Midbar, or even Klishas Haaretz by Yeshua, right, with L'Shaita, Shaloi L'Shlasad Lavai, but he says it's impossible to view it as historical. And this is from a Facebook quote of, this is the Torah.com, Torah History Judaism Part 5.
Right. Yeah, and I think
these are very difficult things for a rabbi to write. It's impossible to regard it as historical.
So when you face...
He's not saying that it's more than historical. He's saying it's impossible to regard it as historical.
Right. So nothing's impossible. But I wouldn't have written that. But actually, what he's saying is let's get away from feeling compelled to look at these as that it had to have happened. And what he's trying to do is saying, I don't care whether historians think it happened. I don't even care whether historians think it's impossible. Fine, let's even grant that they say it's impossible. I want to look for the real meaning of our Torah, and why did Yeshua write that, and what does it try to teach us?
So when he writes it's impossible, what does he mean when he writes it's impossible to believe it as historical?
I think what he's saying is that if you're following historians and archaeologists and scientific theory, it would seem to be impossible. Now, I'm very much more postmodern than perhaps even, anyone in Yeshiva is. And so I don't put impossible. My father always taught me that new math can say 2 + 2 is 5. So, I don't know how he did that, but, I don't like that word impossible. Even when we look at halachot, we have to, we sometimes come up with very surprising things that it's impossible for, the poskim to have ever said this, for the chidah to have said something so radical. I don't like the word impossible, but I think what he means is that if you're following the lead of historians and archaeologists, then it would seem to be impossible. But that's not the lead we follow. We follow Hashem, we follow our Masoret, and we believe in it way michutz, from all the what science tries to really diminish it and sort of enclose our Torah in those kind of terms. We want to go beyond that.
Now, how would you say, Rabbi, here's some more quotes from Rabbi Zev Farber in a number of different articles.
And I should say, Zev Farber is brilliant. He's very smart, but he doesn't play any role in our yeshiva. I wasn't aware that he was on the board. He's definitely a member of the International Rabbinic Fellowship, and he has every right to his opinion.
And he's also the editor of the journal.
No, we don't. There's no.
The Kerem, it says. That's what it says on his website. Yeah. It says he's the editor of the journal of the Marat journal Kerem. That's what it says.
Yeah. So Marat's a wonderful yeshiva, and they train women, but it's not affiliated with Chovovei Torah. So Rabbi Sarah Hurwitz is the dean of that, and so that's a separate thing. That's not. He doesn't edit any journal for Chovovei Torah. And again, he's brilliant. He's wonderful. He's hopeful. I hope that he's addressing a group of more skeptical people, and that it helps with kiruv and helps bring them to the Torah in a very different way. But he's not associated with yeshiva. And I frankly disagree with much of his writing strongly.
Because there is an online a very warm haskama from the yeshiva to some of the things he says. Right, if you want, I could.
I would love to see that because I'm only there 3 years, so I haven't cleaned up all the online things. So I would love to see that because we've written that's some of the things that he's written we don't teach. I don't want to really address him, but I've written on the blog.
Rabbi Lopatin, here are a few quotes. The simplest explanation for the differences between the accounts in Shemais and by Mitzvah Dvarim is they were penned by at least 2 different authors with different conceptions of the desert experience.
Well, always be afraid of when something is simple. life is not simple, and the simplest understanding is that Hashem can write in any style that Hashem wants to write it. So that's even simpler. So that doesn't resonate with me. And again, I believe that the entire Torah was given at Sinai, Mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and so and whatever that means, of course. What is the peh of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Hashem doesn't have a mouth, but it was all given by Hashem. So that I wouldn't agree with that. And I don't think it's so simple to say that.
Let me go on to the issues of dealing with gays in modern life, which is a very complex issue.
Right.
Now, we would all agree, I think, that in the Torah that we have it, Torah Shebiksav and in Torah Shebal Peh, that Leisishkav and Ish, Mishkevei Isha, is an Issa Daraisa, and it's one of the Chayvei Mises. It's one of the Arayas. It's in the Parsha of Arayas. Right. So here's a speech given by a Rav from Chovovei Torah at a LGBT prayer breakfast in Chicago. Here's the exact quote: Rabbeinu Shalom, you instructed us in your wisdom. In Sefer Bereshis, Lo Tov Heyes Adam Levadai.
I could have given that.
Okay.
I don't know.
So Hashem, please bless our public servants. Everyone has the right to seek out the life partner and live in love together with full right with that person. Lo Tov Heyadas Levadai. And basically, it was in the spirit of this that the Illinois passed the Religious Freedom and Marriage Fairness Act. This was in Chicago, guaranteeing the right of same-sex couples to marry. And there was a message given out as rabbis, and which I believe Rabbi Lopatin advocated. The statement begins, as rabbis, parents, and citizens of Illinois, we want to offer all loving and committed couples in our community the support and protection of having the state recognize their marriage. So I would ask you as follows. I can understand that Orthodox Judaism does not wants to support the separation of church and state. Mm-hmm. But to come out and say that Lo Tov Heyes Adam Levadai implies that gay marriage should be condoned and is a good thing, Lo Tov Heyes Adam Levadai, but on the contrary, the Torah supports it. Is that what the Torah means? Lo Tov Heyes Adam Levadai, and at the same time, Ysoscher Ish Mishkevei Isha. I mean, aren't we basically advocating that the Torah sort of has become incorrect at this period of time?
No, chas v'shalom. I mean, I think you have to, if all marriage or really companionship, because I don't know, marriage is a funny word, and we don't have kiddushi between men or women or anything. But
like that. They do have marriage licenses today, which is what the bill supported, right?
Right, because
to make it legal as just as a male-female marriage, not companionship, but to give them all the laws, etc., and a marriage license, which notably, that clerk didn't want, but to give it the same gravitas and legal thing as a male and female marriage. So to say Lo Tov Heyes Adam Levadai and to make a tefillah for it, Rabbeinu Shalom, isn't that? Right.
Well, no. So again, a couple of things. First of all, yes, separation of churches. So if the state, I think, should not actually be recognizing any marriage. It should be civil union, and marriage should be with your religious leader or your spiritual.
Correct.
But if the state is recognizing marriage, then it should not discriminate. And now let's get to the more important issue, which is, is companionship, is a man being with another man. Is that what the Torah is talking about? First of all, Chazal are very clear. They want to say that can we call b'shofera? We don't have to explain that explicitly, but Chazal were very careful to say the Torah is talking about a certain specific sexual act that's prohibited between men. And if we want to define companionship between two lifelong partners as all about sex and as all about a certain type of sex, then you're right. Making that equation would be right. But I don't think that's what the Torah believes and our tradition believes. And it's not about that. And so to tell a young man or a young woman who cannot connect with a member of the opposite sex who was homosexual or lesbian or gay, to tell them you have to lead your life, either change your sexual orientation, which we know is very problematic and harmful usually to anyone who attempts it, but or tell them you're going to have to lead your life alone. For the rest of your life, you're not going to have a companion. You're just going to have to lead a lonely life. I think it's wrong, and I think the Torah definitely is saying that that's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants us, like, look, if someone wants to be a loner, Tarasu Naso, not get married, fine. But in general, people want that companionship. And I'll tell you, if you look on in Israel, on some of the sites, there are Orthodox organizations from ones for Orthodox gay men. They talk about the concept of chaver l'chaim.
But do you think when the government is advocating gay marriage, they're talking about platonic gay marriage?
That's what it's not about sex. It's not about
I think that the issue, at least for me, is that we can recognize that gays have an extremely challenging life under Orthodoxy and a real struggle, but to come out and support it. So, for example, Ramesha Feinstein was asked, can you honor somebody who's a Baal Aveira? He was into marry at a shul dinner, a physician who was greatly helpful to the community. And because there's all kinds of problems. We have the Isser, the Uraim says, the Sefri, Lo Yisach Nifeim. It's an Isser D'Oraisa to be Chaynef Arash. So Ramesha writes, you're allowed to honor him is because you're not honoring the part of him that is evil. You're part of the Aveira. You're honoring the fact that he helps the tzibur, and no mention of it. But to come out with a supportive statement, here's a statement from Rabbi Ysoscher Katz, the head of Halacha in Chovovei. At least that's what his website says. Every modern Orthodox rabbi who doesn't denounce the offensive RCA statement, the RCA objected to the Supreme Court's redefinition of marriage. He says every modern Orthodox rabbi who doesn't denounce the offensive RCA statement is either im hacharish nachrish be'es hazais revach v'atzala yamid laYehudim mimakem acher v'anu beis avinu tayved. I mean, to say that if you don't support gay marriage, you're over on im hacharish nachrish be'es hazais revach v'atzala yamid laYehudim mimakem acher. I mean, do you think Ramesha, who in his tshuva writes here, and it's really a Uraim, it's a Sefri, it's many, Paiskim, etc., that you're not allowed to be chaynef, a Rasha or a Davara, would find it a little bit, I'm searching for a word, but to say that if you don't embrace gay marriage, you're over and hacharish nacharish ke'esa zayis. This is from Rabbi Ysoscher Katz. Isn't there a difference between saying, look, it's something they have to struggle with, and let's do what we can to be empathetic, etc., and something to say, let's embrace gay marriage, and if you don't, isn't that something else?
Well, I think, again, that goes back, when you're talking about the Supreme Court decision, you're going back to church-state issues. And, yes, I think if he's right, that if the Jewish community supports the church getting involved in the state and saying, we don't approve of these things because it's not our religion, then let's see issues of abortion. The Republican platform now is going to say that even in the case of rape, incest, and danger to the life of the mother, you cannot get an abortion. So we have to be very careful as Jews. We're blessed to live in this country where there's a separation of church and state, and we have to advocate for that. And yes, I think that he's not discussing church and state. He's discussing the necessity to recognize gays. He continues. He says, vibrant modern Orthodoxy will write itself out of the parsha because it's not supporting a gay marriage. I mean, this is not about the issue of church and state. This is an issue about recognizing that we have to realize that, LGBT is a very real, alive thing today, and if we're not sensitive to their needs, we will be out of the parsha. I think there's a difference between saying we're empathetic and saying, would you agree with that? I agree that you would agree that also that we have to be it's a reality and we have to be sensitive to their needs, and that's really what he's saying. And I heard Rav Willard spoke gave it to our Torah after the Supreme Court decision. He said that it's moved from gay marriage has moved from mishpat to chok. That with the Supreme Court decision, he understands that American society does not see it as a mishpat, as a logical thing. So then, we have to look at our laws and our laws on sexual relations from our point of view as a chok. Very good for,
that could be true. But here's another statement by Rabbi Katz. Ben Greenfield, a student at YCT, responded to Rabbi Katz. In the modern Orthodox world, Mishkav Zacha is now mutter. Time to deal with it.
Yeah, look, I think well, I don't know what Rabbi Katz, but Rabbi Ben is a great student, and he's talking about attitude that people have. He's not talking about halachic opinions. He's saying that it's very true in the younger crowd. If you ask younger people, and I know that this is not just in the modern Orthodox world, younger people don't have an issue with these things in the same way as the older generation did. There's a real change in attitude. But, we agree that we have to do what we can to help people that are gay, to be sympathetic to especially gay Orthodox, or the struggles they go through. And one way of doing it is to say, we're not going to put up this fence against your companionship. You have to work it out. You have to, discuss with your posek, what are the halachot for a gay Orthodox Jew, but we're not going to put artificial mitzvot in front of you. And that's really all what's going on here.
Rabbi Lopatin, wouldn't it make sense for, as the Rosh Hashiva of Chovovei, for you to say, listen, you can say things like Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov didn't exist. You can say that it's mutter, and because even though we could sit here and say all kinds of exegesis into what you're meaning, when you look at what they say, it's funny. As Jews, we say, this is Bibi's line. He says, the Iranians say they want to destroy us, and we have to take what they say at face value. He says, because other people have said that. I mean, but wouldn't that, and, when you look at a posek, let's take the other side of this, who said something that is a kula, and then some other Rav says, nah, he really didn't mean it. He really meant it as a chumrah. You would say, look, they wrote it. They said it. We have to accept it. So when you have so many statements, wouldn't it make sense as Rosh Hashiva to say, if you say things like this, that when read, they are against Torah Misinai, that you're not a member of our community. If you want to explain it, my dear friend, Rabbi, so-and-so, please go ahead and do so. But we have to take your words as written. Otherwise, we don't, the same verbiage we use against, those who dislike us on the, be it Muslim, Arab, we say, look, we believe what you say. We can't say we don't believe what you say, but here we do believe what you say. I mean, don't words mean anything?
Well, words do mean a lot. We make statements, for instance, again, that the Torah Messina is non-negotiable. And, as a yeshiva, we love our Talmidim, we love our Musmachim, we want to help them. We're a family. And so we actually, we will definitely speak to a Talmud or a Musmach privately if we have strong disagreements with what they say. And we hope that, I think you're right, we have to continue to talk about our belief in Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the Masoret, and our Emunah, Kedosha.
Let me land with a final question, Rabbi, because a quote from Dr. Erin Smokler, who's Yeshiva Smaret, Director of Spiritual Development. She makes
it's a wonderful yeshiva.
A spin-off.
Yeah, it's a sister because Rav Avi wanted created it, but it's not affiliated with us. So she's an amazing teacher. Yes.
So listen to this. She writes about Akeda. It was a test for Avram. There was a learning curve for God as well. Right?
Yeah,
it turned out that God has to learn along the way that there are actual dangers. I think that in a sense you'll forgive the irreverence here. If you'll find this blasphemous, which I do, I think in a sense it was God who failed the test here. I mean,
well,
you see this as a little problematic?
Well, look, in the Chumash, if you read the Chumash, Hashem is the first one to say that Hashem has failed. Nichamti ki asitin. A lot of times, oh my goodness, it was Shaul and with, Noach or Dor HaMabul. Hashem tells us to believe that Hashem is making mistakes. Now, we understand it differently.
But when Hashem says he was Nichamti, it's one thing, but if Dr. Aaron Smokewood to say that God failed is a little different, especially since we say that Vakedas Yitzchak Lazare Hayom Berachamim Tizker is how we end up. The prayer of Rosh Hashanah is, may the Akedah stand in our good stead, on Yom Hadin, and to say that God failed the test here, and that Avram and God both failed, and don't this sound like divrei kfira to you?
No, so I love this. Hashem wants us to, really take Hashem seriously and take Abraham seriously and take these things. So she's really, I don't know if it's not my shot, it's her shot, but I think that what she's saying is she's taking the story very seriously, reading it very deeply. As far as Abraham failing, it's Mefurash in Rashi and Ramban deals with this, that Hashem says, I said Halehu, I didn't say Shachtehu. It's shot in Rashi, but I remember that Rabbi Riverdale wrote about this. This was 25 years ago. I was at YU in the early 90s, and he got in so much trouble they wouldn't allow him to speak in the Beis Medrash because he wrote about it. Rashi, that Avram, one stream, of course, it's a huge chus for Avram, that his commitment to Hashem, and, Kavash, Avram Rachamav, so incredible. But there's the Rashi, there's the Medrash that he misunderstood Hashem, and Hashem never said to slaughter him.
But it doesn't say that God failed.
Yeah, this is taken to another level. I don't know. What does it mean to say that, Hashem? It means that Hashem wants us to see that Hashem, didn't, succeed in his own test. It's very difficult. But it's not difficult at all. There's no, it's not one of the Yud Gimel calling that, Hashem, passed the test or it's fascinating to see, and this is an important conversation about, the perfection of Hashem. I know other Chovovei Torah students have gotten in trouble by saying Hashem made a mistake and this and that. But, you read Tanakh, and Hashem wants us to sympathize with how difficult it is running the world. He thought Shaul would be good, and then Shaul wasn't good. Of course, Hashem knew Shaul would fail, but Hashem wants us to feel that sense of failure. Hashem wants us to feel Hashem feeling failure. Okay? Hashem never fails. Hashem is perfect. Hashem knows everything and is perfect. But Hashem wants us in kiviyachol, to feel what it feels like when you're failing. And sometimes the only way to do that is for Hashem to help us get inside Hashem's mind, kiviyachol, and feel that sense of failure. Certainly with Shaul, when you read that Torah, it's painful, but you're feeling the pain of Hashem. And the Rambam would say it's also to feel Hashem doesn't have any pain. That's kfira. But, our tradition accepts that we feel the pain of Hashem. So that's what she was really saying, that, get inside of Hashem's mind at the Akedah. And what did Hashem say, likely, when that happened? And how did Hashem feel? So it's a different style. It's definitely a different style, but I think it's very consistent with a lot of Midrashim. And even
can you mention a medrash that says by the Akedah that Hashem failed?
Oh, that Hashem failed. A medrash that Hashem failed. I can't mention.
Well, I have to tell you, Rabbi Lopatin, one of the more fascinating interviews I've ever had.
Well, I take that as a deep compliment.
Yeah.
But really, and thank you so much for inviting me to this show and for having the conversation.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Have a wonderful day.
Okay.
All the best, man.
On the phone with us, Rabbi David Rosenthal, who's the author of a new book, Why Open Orthodoxy is Not Orthodox, which is available at your local bookstores as well as Amazon. He's a Talmud of Ner Yisrael, and he's received an approbation from the Rosh Yeshiva of Ner Yisrael, Rabbi Feldman. Welcome, Rabbi Rosenthal.
Thanks for having me.
So, Rabbi Rosenthal, you heard the interview with Rabbi Lopatin. Can you give me, in your words, what do you find not orthodox about open orthodoxy?
If I had to boil it down, it would be the belief by some, including some of the leadership, not in the classical view of the divine Torah, Torah V'Nishmayim, and also the view of halacha, the fact that many open Orthodox leaders say that parts of the Torah are immoral, and they actually say that the sages corrected those immoral passages, and what naturally comes out of that is just like the sages corrected immoral passages in the Torah, that we should too, through halacha, correct what they view that the sages did that was immoral. So those would be the two major things that I had to sum it up.
Can you give me a few examples?
Well, one example would be the head of the Talmud department says the mitzvah of sota is capricious and patriarchal, and he says that Chazal looked at that mitzvah and they made it more sensitive to their sensibilities, to make it more moral, if you will. In a straightforward statement, an open Orthodox rabbi said there are parts of Torah that are ethically problematic. Another open Orthodox rabbi said that
when you talk about the head of the Talmud department, you're talking about Rabbi Ysoscher Katz, I understand, right?
Right.
And he said that the site that was immoral, the way the Torah wrote it.
Oh, his wording was it was capricious and patriarchal, and he viewed Chazal as coming along and making it more egalitarian, maybe meaning more favorable to women. So just the problem with that view is that
next case.
There was another rabbi who said that the the commandment to kill a witch is immoral, and he cites the Salem witch trials as evidence that it's immoral to kill witches.
And who was that?
That was Rabbi Farber.
Okay. Can you give me another example of where you struggle with open orthodoxy? I know you spent a lot of... How long did it take you to write the book?
About a year.
Wow. And I imagine you spent a lot of time on the internet, etc., researching it.
Yeah, I spent a long time looking at their writings online. I read a lot of their tshuvas. I listened to a lot of their shiurim. I drive back and forth between New Jersey and Maryland a lot, so I listened to their shiurim when I would drive. And I think actually, this is just me personally, something that bothers me, is that when you read their responsa, they're filled with I won't say filled. They have very common that there's mistranslations and they're selectively quoting sources to advance an agenda. And I think that just goes in with the mindset that the ends justify the means, that I view Chazal, I view the halacha as problematic, so I'll use whatever means necessary to change that. And the reason that bothers me so much is because I'm from a community where not everyone was privileged to have a yeshiva education. And, they would read these tshuvas and not know the difference. And that's something that bothers me because I think it's, in a way, taking advantage of the less learned.
So give me an example of a tshuva where you think it was sort of the verbiage was misappropriated or mistranslated to reach an end that was unintended.
Sure. One tshuva was written by the Rosh HaYeshiva where he says it's a kiddush Hashem to give money to help rebuild a church. So obviously that's a deviation from what most of us would give.
A kiddush Hashem to rebuild a church?
To give money to help rebuild the church, right. It's in chapter 3 of the book.
Okay.
So, I think besides the fact that most poskim and most normative halacha would disagree with that concept, what really bothered me was that he quoted a tshuva from Rav Moshe Feinstein. He said, relatedly, Rav Moshe says that it's okay to... I think
Rav Moshe talks about an architect who has a living.
Exactly. So what he does, he quotes that tshuva, that responds him, and he says that, relatedly, Rav Moshe says it's okay to serve as an architect for a church. So the layman reading that would say, it seemed the implication given is that Rav Moshe would also be in favor of giving money to a church. That's the clear implication of the responsa. But if you look in the tshuva inside, Rav Moshe says it's a davar mechur, meaning it's an improper thing to do. He says that it's only when there's ava, hatred, and also, or he says, I think, when a person needs a parnasa, or there'll be a hefsid. That all Rabbi Linzer left out. In addition, Rabbi Linzer left out that Rav Moshe in another tshuva explicitly says it's prohibited to give money to a church. So he's quoting half of a tshuva from Moshe without Rav Moshe's limitations and ignoring another tshuva. And the layman reading this, that wasn't privileged to learn in yeshiva, he doesn't know all of Rav Moshe's tshuvas. He's not going to know this, and I think that's not so great to be misleading people like that.
And you don't think Rabbi Linza meant that the Kiddush Hashem is because of Eva?
Doesn't sound like that. I mean, everyone's invited to read it themselves and decide for themselves, but it doesn't sound like that at all when you look at it.
So give us another example of where a tshuva was, in your opinion, misuse of halacha.
Well, there's another Rabbi Katz. This is actually the head of the Talmud department. He says that it's okay for a lady to nurse in shul and reveal herself. And he bases this on, if you read the tshuva, it's 40 pages long. It's in English and in Hebrew. And there were many, many things in there that were very interesting. But one thing that struck me was that he actually mistranslates a rush in brachos. The rush is talking about how a moel, when he's performing the circumcision, can make a bracha on the bris, on the birchas hamila, because there's an erva in front of him. So what he says is that ba'oso shah, meaning at that moment, the moel is involved in the mila, and he can make a bracha even though the baby's his nakedness is revealed. That's one answer of the rush. So what Rabbi Katz does is he takes that rush and he translates it as saying, any time an erva is revealed for a brief moment, there's no problem of saying holy words. Nowhere does the rush say, if the baby is uncovered for a brief moment, that's the reason why it's okay. He literally just invented it out of thin air. It's just a total mistranslation of Hebrew. And on that rush, he bases his whole response as saying that when a lady reveals her nakedness in shul, even in front of men, that's not a problem because it's only being revealed for a brief moment. And everything's cited in the book. Don't take my word for it. Look it up yourself, and I think you'll reach the same conclusion I did.
So, if you had to convey a message to the Rabbanim of Chovovei Torah, or to the modern Orthodox listeners, and I imagine there will be many, what would it be?
To the modern Orthodox listeners, I would say that don't think that open Orthodoxy is just a left-wing version of modern Orthodoxy. It's really not. It's really going beyond the pale. It's more similar now to conservative Judaism, and I think that's a mistake many people make, and it's really why we wrote the book, is because people are viewing open Orthodoxy as just left-wing modern Orthodoxy, but it's really not.
And if you had to give a message to the students or the Rabbanim of Chovovei, what would it be?
I would just be interested. I mean, thus far, nobody associated with Chovovei has responded to any specific argument in the book. So I would actually be very interested to hear what they have to say, because I can't explain it. I mean,
you heard Rabbi Lopatin's interview. Was there anything in it that explained anything?
Not at all.
Do you think that their intent is their heart is in the right place?
I obviously don't know what's going in someone's heart. Only Hashem knows that. But my impression is that many, many of them definitely, mean the right thing. And I think actually a lot of people might have gone to Chovovei instead of YU or some other place and not knowing exactly what the leaders are teaching, what the leaders are preaching there. But I think now that hopefully with this book they'll be aware of that and maybe choose other institutions like Yeshiva University or other places, other places to go to.
Well, thank you very much. The book is by Rabbi David Rosenthal. It's called Why Open Orthodoxy is Not Orthodox. It's available in your local bookstore, Sfarim store, or on Amazon. And you can read the book, listen to Rabbi Lopatin's interview, and decide. Did he respond or didn't he? Thank you very much, Rabbi Rosenthal.
Thanks for having me.
We have on the phone with us from Yerushalayim, Rabbi Ysoscher Katz, who's the head of both Gemara and Halacha in Yeshiva's Chovovei Torah. Welcome, Rabbi Katz.
Thank you.
So, Rabbi Katz, as I'm sure you're aware, Yeshiva's Chovovei Torah has made quite a lot of waves in the world. And people are, Yiddishkeit, Judaism, is always concerned with a new movement. We were concerned, I guess it goes back to Shabsi Tzvi, and we've always been concerned about, quote-unquote, the new. And Yeshiva's Chovovei Torah has come in as a new movement, etc. And there's a concern are the halachic and hashkafic paradigms of Yeshivas Chovovei Torah, are they in line with what is accepted with historic Orthodoxy? So could you give us a little bit of your understanding of it?
Yeah, sure. I'll be very happy to do that, David. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I think that in a nutshell, if I wanted to describe the ethos of Chovovei Torah, Rabbi Avi Weiss, the founder of the yeshiva, said it very well. Basically, what Rabbi Avi Weiss said is that if you look at the statistics, 10% of Jews are Orthodox, and the other 90% of Jews are not. And that's tragic, because if you are an Orthodox Jew and you believe that there's something incredibly beautiful and incredibly exciting about Orthodoxy, the fact that it appeals to only 10% of the Jewish community is, I would say, borders on the tragic, and is very sad and painful. And in a nutshell, the goal of Yeshivat Chovovei Torah is to really figure out a way to bring the beauty of Orthodoxy to the 90% of Jews who don't think that Orthodoxy has anything whatsoever to say to them. That's an incredibly exciting task, and at the same time also an incredibly challenging task. It means that you have to figure out how to kind of present what is so beautiful and so amazing to you to an audience who comes, I would perhaps say, at best, is apathetic to what it is that we have to offer, and at worst, vehemently opposed. And that is a very difficult task. It's a very hard task, a very challenging task, because what it means then is that you have to try to figure out how to do what it takes in order to make this, make Orthodoxy that you find so appealing, equally appealing to people who don't. And you want to do it in a way that is creative, but also authentic. And that is a very thin and very dangerous line, frankly. So if you're asking me, are we walking on a very thin line? Yes. Have we succeeded in still holding on to that line? In my opinion, absolutely. I know others disagree. But definitely, as far as I'm concerned, we've done a great job in trying to really walk that tightrope balance between making Yiddishkeit and observing Yiddishkeit appealing to people for whom it doesn't appeal to, but at the same time stay within the boundaries of what halacha and Orthodoxy prescribes.
So then would it be fair to say that your message is really not then for the mainstream, but it's really more for those who are either the 90% or those among the 10% who are struggling?
Yeah, it's a good point. I actually can illustrate it to you with a story that happened with me. I suspect that before you interviewed me, you kind of looked up my background. So I'm assuming you know that I grew up in Satmar. So I very vividly remember when I was learning in Satmar Yeshiva, I was about 14 or 15 years old. And, in Satmar it's very easy to be countercultural because Satmar has a very narrowly prescribed curriculum, what you could learn, what you can't learn, even in Hasidus. Some of your listeners might be surprised that even in Sifrei Hasidus, there was a very limited, palette of what we can learn and what we can read. So, I had my rebellious moments, and one of my rebellious phases was that I decided to read Rav Tzadok HaKohen from Lublin, his Sefer Pri Tzadik, because, people would talk about, Rav Tzadok is amazing, Rav Tzadok is wonderful. And then I started reading him, and I went to my Rebbe, and I said, Rebbe, I'm not feeling it. I'm not seeing what's really such a big deal, why people are so excited. And my Rebbe had a one-liner which stayed with me forever. And my Rebbe said, Ysoscher, Rav Tzadok talks a lot about tikkun. He first has to experience the kilkul in order to appreciate the beauty of his creative tikkun, which I thought was a very beautiful line describing Rav Tzadok. I think that would be the line I would use to describe what we're doing. If you're a good, nice Orthodox yeshiva bacher in Yisrael, you should absolutely not touch anything that has to do with Chovovei Torah, because you're in a happy place religiously, you're a happy place with Yiddishkeit, you're fine you shouldn't be reading anything having to do with it, And I frankly think that these essays and books that are published that really, so to speak, show to the Haredi world what we're doing is so damaging to the Haredi world, especially for people who, they're fine. They're not struggling with questions in the Emunah. They're not struggling with questions of values. If you've experienced the kilkul, then we are very excited in holding hands and joining with you on this journey of trying to figure out how could we make it possible for you to still be committed to Torah, to Yiddishkeit, to Avodas Hashem, to Yer Shamayim, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, if you haven't experienced the kilkul, do not touch anything having to do with Chovovei Torah.
Rabbi Ysoscher, let me just tell you a few quotes that really get people very nervous, and maybe you could. Here's a quote from Rabbi Farber that just got people so upset. Here's one: Avram and Sarah are folkloristic characters. Factually speaking, they're not my ancestors or anyone else's. He's basically saying the Aves are folklore and they never existed.
And I'm saying to you that he's an epicurus.
Wow, that's powerful. So I
now here's where I would continue the conversation. The question then becomes, what does one do with someone who espouses epicurus in the 21st century, right? And that's when the issue gets complicated. Do we apply the Chazon Ish and Tinnik Nishba today? Do we not apply that? Do we have to be sensitive to the fact that he represents a significant segment within the community that struggles with biblical criticism? That's where things get complicated, and when people misconstrue what our attitude is in the abstract, that this is a kfira, this is epicurus, you have to believe that the Torah is real and true, with what do you do once you've accepted that someone espouses heretical views?
Here's my question to you. I would like to compound that, okay?
Sure.
I don't know what the answer to that, because that's a very complex question, but let me make it even more complex. When somebody is like on the board of a yeshiva and he's in some way a representative of a yeshiva, like he's the editor of the journal, and he espouses that, it blackens the eye of the yeshiva. And he becomes, in effect, seen as a representative, as a mouthpiece. Isn't it damaging for the institution to have somebody like that, who's an editor of the journal, espousing things and not coming out and saying what you know?
Right. So,
I mean, are you doing yourself justice?
Yeah, no. So first of all, he's not the editor of. Whom are you talking about? You're talking
Rabbi
about
Farber is the editor of the journal,
so,
the Keren. That's what it says on his website. That's what it says on his website, anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, he's not in any way affiliated with anything having to do with yeshiva anymore. And so the yeshiva, is gradually trying to kind of develop, language that ends up responding to all the different commitments and responsibilities that we have. And I totally sympathize with any Yerei Shemayim that hears epicurus and says, when are they going to respond appropriately? And it's a legitimate sense of, of outrage and anger, which I totally agree with you and totally sympathize. But at the same time, I also sympathize with the terribly debilitating fear that my colleagues and I, and we're talking about a small staff, Chovovei is not the big boogeyman that it sounds, it's a very small staff, the terribly debilitating fear of Oli mi yotzri, Oli mi yitzri. God forbid if we condemn the Farber more than necessary, the consequences for the overall chances for a vibrant modern Orthodoxy, I have to qualify it, modern Orthodoxy, the consequences can be as great as not condemning him enough. And to find that really tough balance is very difficult. And I will be honest with you, David, I think that in the yeshiva, a month doesn't go by that we don't revisit the issue. Can we push the thing a little bit further? Can we kind of really go the next step? And part of it is also to establish, so to speak, liberal credentials on the street that people would trust us enough to know that even if we come down really hard on Ikrei Emunah, we're still here to respond to people who have liberal values and want to find a place in Orthodoxy. Is it too slow? Yes, for a lot of people it's too slow. Do I resent that we're not going faster? No, I don't. Did I make the right choice? I'll only find out when I get to Shemayim in Olam Haba. I'll never know until then.
Let me ask you another question. Okay, here's a drasha given by one of the Rabbanim of Chovovei Torah, and this was on before the Illinois Senate when they were debating whether to allow gay marriage, and it was like this. It says, Rabbeinu Shalom. It says, Lo tov heyos adam levadei. Right? It's not fair for anybody to stay single and to live single. Right? The Torah doesn't want to condemn anybody to a life of living alone. There has to be an opportunity for people to live and find a lifelong partner. Right? Basically, a speech about Lo tov heyos adam levadei. So my question to you is, and based on this speech and this thing, they allowed. So my question to you is, I can understand that, we should, given where the world is today, that Orthodoxy should maybe be silent about the matter. Maybe it's like don't ask, don't tell, separation of church and state. But to come out and say that the pasuk says Lo tov heyos adam levadei is advocating for gay marriage, I mean the Marshal would say that's at Ziyuf HaTorah. Would that be incorrect?
Yeah, certainly you're not giving me softballs that way. I don't think we have yet resolved what the role of, what is the Orthodox attitude towards the separation of church and state, right? Meaning, remember, he's talking to a American legislator that's not Orthodox, right? And the question then becomes, when you talk to an American legislator as an Orthodox rabbi, do you espouse Orthodox beliefs, or do you espouse Orthodox sensitivity? My bet to you, David, is that 95% of the people who sat there and listened to him thought, wow, these Orthodox people are not as mean and as discriminatory as I thought. He spoke so sensitively on this issue, and he created an incredible Kiddush Hashem. And at the same time, theologically, again, it comes back to my point before about who's your audience. He's not talking to the yeshiva buffet. He's talking to people who are not Jewish, or people who at least are not Shomrei Torah and Mitzvah. So he's not giving a sheer now on homosexuality, in which case he would say, how dare you mention Lo tov heyos adam levadei without talking also about the pasuk about Eva who he. That's not the context, and that's I think one of the biggest.
But could you make a Kiddush Hashem by going against the Torah, by misrepresenting the intent of the Torah? Is that a Kiddush Hashem?
No, David. Nobody doubts for a minute. See, here's the thing. The problem is that we're not operating in a vacuum. Orthodox, philosophy, Orthodox belief, Orthodox values have been established, for many, many years in America. Everybody knows Orthodox Jews are committed to Torah. The question now is whether people affiliated with Chovovei can come and complement that attitude with an additional layer of sensitivity, kindness, and again, exactly what I said earlier to you. Can we do that speaking out of a Torah space and show people, look, that Torah that you always were told is primitive, is backward, is exclusionary. Guess what? That's not the whole picture. Yeah, of course I'm an Orthodox Jew. Of course I am opposed to gay marriage from a halachic perspective. But I can still encourage the legislator to explore the sensitivity issues, because guess what? Orthodoxy doesn't only talk about halakha, it also talks about other things as well. So the problem again is that the people who critique Chovovei assume Chovovei is talking to a Lakewood yeshiva audience, to a Rav David Soloveitchik's base medrash. They're not talking to them. They don't need to be told, A, that gay sex is out there, B, that the Torah is the kindest thing that ever existed. The Chovovei message is for people, like I said before, who have experienced the kilkul and need support for the tikkun. So if someone goes to a legislator and says, look, I have kippah that makes me Orthodox, my shul is Orthodox, I nevertheless can come to the government and advocate sensitivity to human beings whose lifestyle I religiously find inappropriate.
But he's not saying that. But he's saying lo tovei adam lavad. He says the Torah in Marayi says, he says, I think it's wonderful and right. This that you're doing, and I'm advocating it. So what's the Kiddush Hashem about saying that what the Torah says is incorrect?
No. See, but again, David, you're bringing your yeshiva education hat to bear on a conversation outside of a yeshiva conversation context. The context is not a yeshiva conversation. It's not. He's not coming to yeshiva bachram and saying to them, "Hey guys, just chug this all, homosexuality, mishigas. To do a pasuk in the Torah with Zok, lo tova yos adam lavado." That's not who he's talking to. You are taking what he said, bringing it into the Beis Medrash, pretending he's talking to you and saying, he's telling me that gay sex is not usher. He wasn't talking to you. He was talking to you, to people who have their own ideas about gay sex and who themselves think that loneliness is the most devastating plague of modern Judaism, of modern life. And he comes along and says, listen, I sympathize with you. I think it's important that we should find venues for people for whom the Israel doesn't speak to nevertheless experience maximal companionship. So what's wrong with saying that? I really am not.
Because these people know that biblically it's forbidden. The Christians know that.
And they still know, even when Rabbi Dollinger, this is the person you're referring to, Rabbi Barry Dollinger, even Rabbi Barry Dollinger gets up there and says, nobody thinks that Rabbi Barry Dollinger now all of a sudden rejected all of Jewish history. They know that. They know Orthodoxy is opposed to homosexuality. What they find out now is that, guess what? There are still some people who are nevertheless sensitive, even though they're Orthodox. What a beautiful Kiddush Hashem.
Here's a quote, by the way, that is it's on your Facebook page, so take it for what it is. Okay. Here's a quote. He says, "The retelling of the Exodus story is fiction. It's a record of God's conversation with fictionalized characters."
Yep.
Could you just give me a little color on that?
It is so perfect. It is so perfect. Here is the thing that David Rosenthal and all of those who quote my Facebook posts are missing. There's a huge din out there, a huge noise out there in the world of social media. And if you have made it a commitment to delve into that world, as I did, I like to joke with people that I have two pulpits. I have a pulpit in Prospect Heights and I have another pulpit on Facebook. And I really believe, by the way, that every Rav should be on Facebook because that's what the younger generation is. The younger generation are virtual natives. They live in the virtual world. And if you want to be in conversation with them and have fun with them, that's where you should be. In order to stand out, you need to tweak things so that people should pay attention to you because there are billions of bits of data every time. When when Chazal say, Keneged arba banim dibro Torah, echad chacham, echad rasha, echad tam, what do? They take 4 psukim and add a story overlay and say, there are these imaginary characters that the pasuk is talking about. And that's all I'm saying. But in order for me to get your attention, as obviously I did, and in the process also the hundreds of people who read Facebook, I drop an occasional shocking and provocative line so that people should listen to me because otherwise there's millions of other things going on there. And frankly, once you have a generous approach to my posts, which sadly a lot of the critics don't, and you take the time to think what I'm saying, you say, he's just giving a little bit, Chazal say, Torah, that means they've taken the parshas of the Torah and added a fictional overlay. There are fictional characters who the God is dialoguing with. Ysoscher said something cool, added a little bit of a layer that we can repeat as a Dvar Torah at the Shabbos table. Oh, let me listen to him tomorrow when he also tells me that we're not going to ever compromise on Kitnios, or that I'm never going to give you a heter on second day of Yom Tov, because he's my kind of guy. He kind of talks a little bit of the language that I can relate to. He uses kind of contemporary terms and says the Torah is fiction, when really it doesn't mean that the Torah is fiction. He only means that sometimes Chazal will insert fictional characters to make it exciting. Cool guy. Let me talk to him. Let me come to him next time with my Nida Shaila, which I frankly do because I trust him. So once you bring a generous orientation to my posting, you don't look to cop me. You understand that the politics of Facebook is such that you have to say something provocative for people to pay attention to you. You also realize that your audience is very suspicious of you. You're the frum rabbi. Why would I come to him? He doesn't get it.
Rabbi Katz, do you think that there's a danger that Talmidim of yours or Rabbanim who will go out will not necessarily understand it with the whole amkus that you're giving it over, not unlike in Chas v'Shalom, I don't mean to compare you to, but like Mendelssohn who had Haskama from Rabbi Kiva Eger, the Sefer Habir, but they didn't get it, his Talmidim, right? Like, do you think that you're walking a line where when somebody talks to you, they could get it, but it gets lost in some time, like when you play telephone and what happens is the quotes get thing, and then all you're left with is the quote without the beer, and vibes together of Chachamim Hizaru b'Divreichem.
Totally. I couldn't have said it better, David. I couldn't have said it better, and you must probably have described my Kapitel Tzilim every day. I beg the Rebbeinu Shloim that my Talmidim should not misconstrue what I say in a way that's going to make everything I do a waste. And I'm terrified of that.
Well, Rabbi Katz, thank you so much and have a safe trip back.
Sure. Kol Tov, David.
Take care. Kol Tov. All the best.